Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a really fascinating corner of the audio world today. It's all about, precision, beauty, and just incredible sound in the market for handcrafted loudspeakers.
That's right. We've been looking at some pretty detailed market research. It covers global trends, revenue forecasts, and really where the opportunities seem to be emerging for these, well, unique high-fidelity pieces.
And the time frame we're covering is pretty significant too. We're tracking data from 2021, looking ahead through 2025, and projecting all the way out to 2033.
hmm
So our goal here is to pull out the key insights. Maybe you're an investor looking at potential markets, or perhaps you're an audiophile, someone who really appreciates the art and the science here.
Or a manufacturer in this space, even.
Exactly. Or maybe you're just curious why people are spending significant money on audio equipment built with this level of meticulous care.
It's definitely about getting beyond just the numbers and understanding the sort of the bigger story and that overall picture. For handcrafted loudspeakers globally, it's looking like a story of really robust, consistent growth.
Okay, so give us the headline figures then. What was the starting point? Where was this market, say, back in 2021?
Right. So in 2021, global sales revenue, it stood at $824.6 million.
Okay.
Now, the projection for this year, 2025, it actually crosses a pretty important threshold. It's expected to hit $1.01 billion.
Wow. Okay. Breaking that billion-dollar mark, that definitely signals some real momentum, doesn't it?
It really does.
And looking further out towards 2033.
The forecast gets pretty substantial by then. The projection is $1.5151 billion.
It's 1.5 billion.
Yeah, and across that whole period, 2021 to 2033, that represents a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of 5.2%.
Okay, let's just pause on CAGR for a moment. For anyone listening who might not be familiar, what does that 5.2% actually tell us?
Right. So, CAGR, compound annual growth rate. It essentially gives you the average year-over-year growth rate over that specific period, 2021 to 2033 in this case. It kind of smooths out the bumps, any ups and downs year to year, and gives one number representing that steady pace of expansion.
So a single useful metric.
Exactly. And, a 5.2% CAGR over more than a decade. For a premium, somewhat niche product like this, it indicates really healthy sort of embedded demand. It's not just a temporary spike.
So it's not just a flash in the pan. This growth, it's projected to keep going year after year. And that rate, 5.2%, it seems to really reflect that broader trend we're seeing towards premium audio gear, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
People seem increasingly willing to invest in equipment that isn't just about the tech specs, but also about, the build quality, the materials, the actual craftsmanship involved.
That's precisely what this source material highlights. These aren't your standard mass-produced items.
Yeah.
When we talk handcrafted, we're talking about a different level of precision, material selection, often bespoke assembly processes. It's that specific blend, top-tier sound engineering combined with, let's say, artisan skill that commands a premium and is clearly driving this market growth.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. How does this picture change when we start looking at different parts of the world? Let's maybe start with North America.
Sure. North America was actually the largest market by value back in 2021. Came in at $313.4 million.
Okay, the biggest piece of the pie then.
At that point, yes.
Hey.
And by 2033, it's expected to grow significantly too, reaching $522.7 million.
That's solid growth, definitely. Though the regional CAGR you mentioned there is a bit lower than the global average, right? About 4.3%.
That's correct, 4.3%. A bit more moderate than the global 5.2%.
So what does the research tell us about the key markets within North America, the U.S., Canada, Mexico?
Well, the United States obviously holds the largest share. Its projected CAGR is around 4%.
Okay.
But what's quite interesting is that both Canada and Mexico are actually showing faster growth rates within the region.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Canada has a strong 5.7% CAGR projected through 2033, and Mexico is also outpacing the U.S. rate at 5.1%.
That's a key detail. So while the U.S. is the biggest market in terms of sheer size, its neighbors, Canada and Mexico, are actually accelerating demand for these handcrafted speakers at a faster pace.
Exactly. Something to note if you're looking at, say, expansion opportunities within North America.
Definitely. Okay, let's move across the Atlantic. Europe, another big established market, I assume.
Yes, very much so. Europe was valued at $236.7 million in 2021. The forecast for 2033 is $418.2 million, and its regional CAGR is 4.9%.
4.9%. So slightly higher than North America's growth rate, closer to the global average.
Just a bit, yeah.
Are there any particular countries in Europe standing out in the data, driving that growth?
Well, Germany remains the largest single market by value in Europe, and it has a healthy 5.7% CAGR projected.
Okay.
But the data actually points to the United Kingdom showing the strongest growth momentum among the countries listed. The UK has a notable...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
showing the strongest growth momentum among the countries listed. The UK has a notable 6.2% CAGR projected through 2033.
6.2% for the UK. Wow, okay, that's definitely a highlight for Europe.
It is.
What about some of the other major players, like France, Italy, Russia?
France is projected around 4.9% CAGR, so right on the regional average. Russia's a bit lower at 4%. Italy is actually doing quite well, slightly above the average at 5.3% CAGR.
Yeah.
The source also includes figures for, say, Spain at 4.3%, and some smaller markets, too. Luxembourg, for example, shows a more modest rise, about 2.8% CAGR.
Right. So it gives you that contrast, showing not everywhere is growing at the same rapid pace.
Exactly. It paints a more nuanced picture of the European market.
Okay, now let's turn to what the source calls a hotspot, Asia Pacific. This sounds like where the really dynamic growth is happening.
And the numbers absolutely back that description up, emphatically. The Asia-Pacific market, it was valued at $177.3 million in 2021.
Right.
But the projection for 2033 is huge growth, reaching $384.8 million.
Whoa, that's more than double the 2021 value.
It is. It signifies really substantial expansion.
So what's the overall KGR for the Asia-Pacific region, then?
It's the highest regional CAGR mentioned in the research, a very robust 6.6%.
6.6%. Okay, that really underlines why it's being called a hotspot. It seems like the engine for future global growth in this segment.
It certainly looks that way based on these projections.
And drilling down within Asia-Pacific, where's the acceleration most pronounced? China, I assume, is significant.
China is the largest market by value, yes, and it shows a strong 6.7% CAGR. So perfectly aligned with that high regional trend.
Oh, hey.
But the absolute standout, the fastest growing single market mentioned anywhere in this entire research, that's India. India, with an astonishing 8.6% CAGR projected through 2033.
8.6%. That's incredible.
It really is. And Australia isn't far behind either, also showing impressive acceleration with an 8% CAGR.
Wow. 8.6% and 8%. Those are massive numbers. It suggests a really rapidly expanding base of, I guess, audiophiles or affluent consumers in India and Australia specifically.
That's the implication, yes. Likely linked to rising disposable incomes, a growing middle class, and perhaps a stronger cultural appreciation developing for these high-end, unique audio products.
Makes sense.
And it's not just those two. Japan and South Korea are also showing solid growth, both above 5.5% CAGR. Southeast Asia is contributing too, around 5.4%. So the trend is quite broad across the region, even if India and Australia are leading the charge.
Fascinating stuff in Asia-Pacific. Okay, moving south. The research mentions healthy progress in South America. What does that look like?
Yeah, healthy progress seems about right. The countries detailed there, they're showing pretty consistent growth, mostly above 4.5% CAGR. Brazil and Argentina seem to be leading the pack down there. Their CGRs are 6.1% and 6.3% respectively.
6.1 and 6.3%. So actually quite strong demand emerging in those specific economies, outpacing even some European countries.
That's right. It indicates real momentum building there.
And you mentioned some interesting patterns for Colombia and Peru in the data we looked at earlier.
Yes, that was interesting. The data showed their market values were projected to be relatively stable between 2021 and 2025, but then accelerate into growth through 2033. Their overall CAGRs end up being 4.8% for Colombia and 5.2% for Peru.
Okay, so a bit of a delayed acceleration there, perhaps.
Potentially. And Chile shows a more gradual, steady increase across the whole period, landing at a 5.5% CGR.
So the South American picture is one of maybe smaller starting points than North America or Europe, but definitely building momentum.
Definitely building momentum, yes.
Right, and finally, let's just quickly touch on the Middle East and Africa. What's the story there?
This region is also part of the global growth narrative. Countries like Egypt, for instance, show steady expansion projected at a 5.4% CAGR.
Okay.
Turkey is around 4.8%, and the rest of the Middle East segment also shows growth projected above 5% CAGR. So it's contributing positively to that overall global picture of expansion. Got it. So, okay, we've gone through a lot of numbers, region by region. When we take a step back now and look at the big picture these trends paint, What's the main takeaway? What's the core message from this research?
I think the core takeaway is pretty unambiguous, actually. The market for handcrafted loudspeakers. It's not just some static niche, it is actively expanding and expanding globally. This research really confirms that demand for these unique premium audio products is on a clear upward path.
And it seems to boil down to that mix of factors you mentioned right at the start, doesn't it?
Precisely. The key drivers seem to be, 1, the desire for genuinely superior sound quality.
Right, performance.
Performance. But combined with an appreciation for, 2, the design precision, the high-quality materials used, and maybe 3, that sense of exclusivity or personalization that comes with something handcrafted.
That blend.
That blend, exactly. And it's clearly a global phenomenon. But as we saw in the regional data, the pace of adoption and growth, well, that varies quite significantly. Yeah, with regions like Asia Pacific and especially countries like India and Australia just showing incredibly rapid acceleration compared to some others.
That's the key geographical insight, I'd say.
So these trends, these figures, they offer really crucial insights, don't they? Whether you're listening as an investor, scouting growth areas, or maybe you're a manufacturer planning your next market strategy.
Or even just an audiophile wanting to understand the landscape of high-end audio craftsmanship better.
Exactly.
It clearly highlights where that demand is strongest right now, but maybe more importantly, where it's projected to grow fastest. It paints a picture of a market that really values, quality, perhaps heritage, and definitely performance.
Absolutely. Which I think leaves you, the listener, with a really interesting thought to consider as we wrap up. Given this robust global growth we've discussed and those particularly high growth rates we saw in really diverse markets, places like India, Australia, Argentina, Canada, the UK, what specific cultural factors or maybe economic drivers might be uniquely accelerating the demand for these premium handcrafted products faster in those specific regions compared to others?
That's a great question.
It's something fascinating to ponder, thinking about what's really driving desire for this level of craftsmanship and audio fidelity in different parts of the world.
All right, let's dive into a world that's really all about feeling sound, not just hearing it. We're taking a deep dive today into high-end, handcrafted loudspeakers.
Yeah, and you shared some really fascinating source material. Gives us a good look behind the curtain of this.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Really fascinating source material. Gives us a good look behind the curtain of this, well, pretty unique market.
Exactly. So the mission today, let's unpack the key insights driving this whole thing, right?
Right. Understand the hurdles, the challenges they face.
And look at what's shaping its future.
Yeah.
Because it's clear from the sources, this isn't just tech.
No, definitely not. It's deeply rooted in passion, precision.
And that ultimate experience of sound.
Yeah.
Okay, so thinking about what drives this market, your sources point to a few key things. What jumps out first?
Well, the absolute core, I think, is that relentless pursuit of high-fidelity sound.
Okay.
Audiophiles, professional sound engineers, they aren't just buying speakers off the shelf.
They want something specific.
They're demanding systems with unmatched acoustic clarity and tonal richness. That's the quote that stands out.
Right. And the sources emphasize these aren't mass-produced items.
No, not at all. They're described as precision instruments, often tuned by ear, crafted with real passion.
That human touch, the hand tuning.
Yeah.
That must make a huge difference.
It does. It allows for those tiny adjustments, things automated processes just can't replicate. Crucial for that really high-end sound.
Makes sense. Connecting that precision to the passion.
Right.
And that kind of leads into the next driver, doesn't it? The luxury aspect.
Oh, absolutely. The custom market. For high net worth individuals, these speakers are more than just functional.
Right. Your sources say they become a status symbol and lifestyle choice.
Exactly. They aren't hidden away. It's like the sources say they're not just heard, they're seen, admired, and showcased.
So they're part of the home's design. Art, almost.
Yeah, blending art and function beautifully.
And it's interesting how that luxury angle connects to something maybe a bit more traditional, the analog thing.
The resurgence, yeah. Vinyl's comeback is huge here.
So people want speakers that can actually deliver that authentic analog warmth.
Precisely. That rich, full sound you associate with records. And many feel these handcrafted speakers are just better equipped for that depth, that texture.
Compared to maybe more common mass-produced digital systems.
Yeah, that's the feeling.
Yeah, okay, so you've got these powerful drivers. Perfect sound, luxury, the analog revival. But getting there,
Mm-hmm.
It comes with challenges, right?
Oh, definitely. Big hurdle.
What do the sources point to as the main ones?
Well, the most obvious one is cost. Just unavoidable.
Right.
That level of hand craftsmanship, the materials they use, it means a high production cost and corresponding retail price.
So it puts them out of reach for the average consumer. Simple as that.
Pretty much. This is a niche market, no doubt.
And that cost is tied directly to how they're made, isn't it? You can't just ramp up production.
Exactly. There's a longer production time and limited scalability.
Right.
I mean, each speaker might take hours, days,
Yeah.
sometimes weeks of skilled work.
You just can't scale that like a normal factory.
Nope. Which naturally limits how many they can make.
And with that high price, limited availability, getting sort of mass market awareness becomes tough.
It's a real hurdle, especially when lots of people prioritize convenience or maybe just lower cost audio options. It's a very niche appeal, like you said.
So, okay, given those challenges, how does this market keep going? How do they stay true to the craft but still move forward?
Well, the sources highlighted some interesting trends shaping the future.
Like what?
Materials, for one. There's a growing use of exotic and sustainable materials.
Oh, interesting. Like what kind of materials?
Think reclaimed hardwoods, maybe rare metals, things that give each speaker a really distinct personality.
And that probably appeals to buyers looking for something unique, maybe even eco-conscious.
Yeah, that's part of it. Then there's direct customization. That's changing things too.
How so?
Your sources mentioned boutique brands offering these like design your own speaker experiences online.
So bypassing retail.
Right. Allows for deep personalization, a direct link between the maker and the buyer.
And maybe surprisingly, they're also embracing modern tech, aren't they?
They are integrating Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, even voice assistants sometimes.
So vintage craftsmanship meeting modern functionality.
Exactly. It shows they're finding ways to harmonize the two, making sure these pieces fit into a modern connected home.
That's a really interesting balance, artisanal and integrated.
Mm-hmm.
So wrapping this up, thinking about you, the listener who sent these sources in, it feels like this market is really where art and sound converge.
Yeah, all focused on delivering an incredibly immersive experience.
So whether you're deep into high-end audio yourself, or maybe just interested in the business of niche luxury,
Or even just fascinated by that intersection of traditional craft and new tech.
it's a space that's constantly pushing boundaries.
Definitely. And maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. How does that relentless pursuit of a perfect sensory experience, like perfect sound, how does that keep pushing the limits of both human skill and technology? It makes you wonder, as tech smarter, what happens to the value of that human touch in the things we experience? Something to think about.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.